Imagine a landscape where the earth itself seems to be gasping for air. Beneath the blistering heat of the South Texas border, a silent, slow-motion catastrophe is unfolding, and it is revealing secrets that were meant to be buried forever. As the waters of Falcon Lake recede to a haunting 20% of their capacity, they are not just leaving behind sun-cracked mud and bleached timber. They are surrendering the ghost of a civilization. From the murky depths, the jagged, silt-stained spires of Guerrero Viejo are rising once more. This isn't just an archaeological curiosity, it is a grim, calcified measuring stick for a region on the brink of total hydrological collapse. Founded in the mid-1700s, Guerrero Viejo was once a thriving colonial hub of sandstone and limestone architecture, a testament to human resilience in the arid brushlands. But in 1954, that history was intentionally drowned. The construction of the Falcon Dam, a massive binational project on the Rio Grande, transformed this valley into a reservoir meant to sustain millions. For 7 decades, the town's grand cathedral and cobblestone streets existed only as a drowned memory, navigated by catfish and obscured by layers of deep water sediment. But today, the reservoir is failing. The water that once reached heights of over 300 feet has vanished, exposing the skeletal remains of the 18th century to the harsh, modern sun. Walking through these ruins today is a sensory assault. The air is thick with the scent of baked mineral and decaying organic matter. You can run your fingers across the intricate carvings of the Church of Nuestra Señora del Refugio, now scarred by decades of extreme water pressure and invasive species. This lake was designed to hold over 2.5 million acre-feet of water, a staggering volume meant to safeguard the lives of 500,000 people across Zapata County and the Mexican state of Tamaulipas. Now, that safety net has been shredded. The lake has shrunk into a fractured mosaic of stagnant pools and exposed plateaus. While tourists might marvel at the reappearance of a lost city, the local residents see something much more terrifying. To them, every inch of limestone that emerges from the abyss is an inch of life-sustaining water that has been reclaimed by the sky. And as the ruins continue to climb, a chilling realization is setting in: the past hasn't just returned to visit. It is here to announce that the future is running dry. But this isn't just a story about a lack of rain. To understand why Falcon Lake is dying, we have to look 2,000 miles upstream, where a geological giant is being bled white before it ever reaches the border. The Rio Grande is a geological contradiction, a 900-mile lifeline that flows through some of the most arid territory on the North American continent. To understand the death of Falcon Lake, we must perform a hydrological autopsy, tracing the river's bloodline back to its origin in the San Juan Mountains of southern Colorado. Historically, this high-altitude wilderness acted as a frozen bank account, storing winter snowpack and releasing it slowly during the spring thaw. But the climate math has shifted. We are witnessing a phenomenon scientists call sublimation, where rising temperatures cause snow to turn directly into water vapor before it can even melt into the stream. What does reach the ground is often swallowed by soils that are parched and thirsty from years of unprecedented heat. As the water begins its treacherous journey south, it enters the Rio Grande Rift, a massive tectonic trench, where the Earth's crust is literally pulling apart. This geological feature dictates the river's path through New Mexico and into Texas, but it also creates a gauntlet of human extraction. The Rio Grande is one of the most over-allocated river systems on the planet. By the time the current reaches the Texas border, it has already been tapped by thousands of straws. Massive agricultural districts in the San Luis Valley, the growing urban thirst of Albuquerque and El Paso, and endless miles of irrigation canals all take their share. This is a zero-sum game played across 3 states and 2 nations. Every gallon diverted for a suburban lawn in the north is a gallon that will never reach the citrus groves of the south. Geologists and hydrologists are now tracking a terrifying trend: conveyance loss. Because the riverbed itself is so dry and the atmosphere so volatile, a significant percentage of the water simply vanishes during transit. It is a hydrological vanishing act performed over thousands of miles of scorched earth. For the residents near Falcon Lake, the river isn't a rushing torrent. It is a ghost of its former self, a depleted stream struggling to survive the desert sun. The great river is being dismantled piece by piece, long before it ever touches the dam. But while the climate is the primary suspect in this disappearance, there is a man-made shadow looming over the water, a 70-year-old legal ghost that is haunting the border today. In 1944, diplomats from Washington, D.C. and Mexico City sat down to divide a miracle. At that time, the Rio Grande was a powerhouse, fueled by reliable snowpacks in a climate that hadn't yet begun its rapid shift toward permanent aridification. The resulting treaty relating to the utilization of the waters of the Colorado and Tijuana rivers and of the Rio Grande was a masterpiece of mid-century optimism. It established a rigid accounting system. Mexico was to deliver 1.75 million acre-feet of water every 5 years through 6 major tributaries. But laws, no matter how carefully phrased, cannot command the clouds. Today, that treaty is no longer a blueprint for cooperation. It has become a legal cage, trapping both nations in a cycle of debt and desperation. For years, Mexico has struggled with a staggering hydrological deficit, owing the United States over 700,000 acre-feet of water. In the spring of 2026, the diplomatic tension reached a boiling point, leading to a historic guaranteed annual delivery agreement designed to stabilize the border's water security. Yet, even with these high-level signatures, the gap between paper water and actual flow remains immense. Upstream in Mexico, farmers face their own existential threats, leading to explosive geopolitical friction. When the well runs dry, the first thing to evaporate is diplomacy. The International Boundary and Water Commission, the body tasked with policing this agreement, finds itself acting as a record keeper for a crisis where the rules of physics are beginning to override the rules of law. The fundamental flaw of the 1944 treaty is its static nature. It was written for a world of half a century ago, failing to account for the new normal of the 21st century. Explosive population growth and an atmosphere that is becoming more efficient at stealing water every year. We are trying to manage a modern ecological catastrophe with a vintage paper map. As the diplomatic bickering continues in air-conditioned offices, the physical reality on the ground remains unchanged. The lake continues to bleed, and as of late April 2026, the reservoir sits at a precarious 21% capacity. For the people whose entire lives are rooted in the soil of the Rio Grande Valley, this legal stalemate is translating into a very real, very terminal threat. Because as the water debt grows, the literal roots of the region's economy are beginning to wither. The lower Rio Grande Valley has long been heralded as the Magic Valley, a subtropical oasis carved out of the thorny brush of South Texas. It is a place where the soil is rich with deltaic silt, and the sun provides a year-round growing season. But this emerald ribbon of citrus groves and sugarcane fields is currently undergoing a violent transformation. In the botanical world, there is a terrifying threshold known as the permanent wilting point. This is the biological point of no return, when the moisture in the soil drops so low that the osmotic pressure within a plant's roots can no longer overcome the molecular tension of the parched earth. The plant begins to essentially consume itself. For the legendary Texas ruby red grapefruit trees, this is a slow-motion death sentence. When a tree reaches this threshold, the xylomate's internal vascular plumbing undergoes a process called cavitation. Microscopic air bubbles form within the sap, snapping the hydraulic chain that pulls water from the deep roots to the high canopy. Once these vessels are blocked by air, the damage is irreversible. A citrus grove isn't like a field of corn or cotton. You cannot simply replant next season and hope for better luck. These trees represent 2 decades of careful maturation and millions of dollars in capital investment. When the water stops flowing from Falcon Lake, 20 years of biological history are erased in a single, brutal summer. We aren't just looking at a lost harvest. We are witnessing the liquidation of an entire regional heritage. The economic fallout is radiating outward like a seismic wave. As the groves turn to gray, brittle skeletons, the machinery of the valley grinds to a halt. The packing houses, where millions of pounds of produce are sorted for global export, have fallen silent. The trucking fleets that normally clog the border highways are now idling in dirt lots. This instability has caught the eye of global financial watchdogs. Rating agencies like Moody's have begun to downgrade the creditworthiness of border municipalities, citing water-stressed revenue streams. A city that cannot guarantee a running tap is a city that cannot secure a bond for its future. We are seeing the birth of a new kind of ghost town, one that isn't submerged underwater, but one that is being strangled by the total lack of it. And yet, as the farmers watch their livelihoods crumble into the dust, an even more relentless thief is at work high above them, turning the very atmosphere into a weapon. To truly grasp the scale of this disaster, we must look beyond the simple lack of rain and confront an invisible predator, the vapor pressure deficit, or VPD. In the complex physics of hydrology, VPD is the difference between the amount of moisture the air currently holds and the amount it could hold when fully saturated. As the relentless South Texas sun hammers the exposed surface of Falcon Lake, the air temperature skyrockets. According to the Clausius-Clapeyron relation, for every 1 degree Celsius of warming, the atmosphere's capacity to hold water vapor increases by approximately 7%. This creates what scientists call a thirsty atmosphere vacuum-like force that pulls moisture directly from the lake's surface with terrifying efficiency. In the desert heat, the atmosphere becomes a glutton. The math of this molecular theft is staggering. On an average year, the intense solar radiation and high winds of the border region cause the lake to lose between 5 and 7 vertical feet of water to evaporation alone. To put that in perspective, imagine a 7-story building submerged in the lake. In just 12 months, the sky would swallow enough water to expose the roof. This isn't just a loss of volume. It's a concentration of catastrophe. As the water evaporates, the remaining pool becomes more saline, stressing the local aquatic ecosystem and making the remaining supply significantly harder and more expensive to treat for human consumption. We often think of drought as a failure of the clouds to provide, but in reality, it is often a success of the atmosphere in taking. Even if a major tropical storm were to stall over the region today, much of that moisture would be intercepted by the parched soils and the greedy air before it ever reached the reservoir. We are trapped in a feedback loop where the heat creates more evaporation, which in turn dries the landscape, leading to even higher local temperatures. It is a self-sustaining engine of desiccation. The lake is essentially bleeding into the sky, and there is no tourniquet in sight. While the natural world works at this relentless microscopic pace, the human response is struggling to keep up with the sheer speed of the decline. We are now racing toward a point where the engineering of the past and the technology of the future are about to collide in a catastrophic gap of time, a window of months, where the taps might simply run dry. As the waterline of Falcon Lake retreats, it is exposing a terrifying structural vulnerability, the physical death of the intake pipe. Most of the water infrastructure along the border was engineered for a different geological era, with pumps positioned to draw from a robust, deep reservoir. Now, as the surface level plunges, engineers are frantically extending pipes into the encroaching, desperate game of hydrological limbo, where the prize is survival. But there is a floor to this game, a point of no return, known in the industry as dead pool. This is the catastrophic elevation, where the water falls below the lowest possible intake, rendering the massive dam and its treatment plants into nothing more than monumental relics of concrete and dust. The collision between the speed of the drought and the speed of modern bureaucracy is reaching terminal velocity. While the Texas Water Development Board has fast-tracked major initiatives, including a regional desalination plant designed to process the brackish groundwater of the Gulf Coast infrastructure, is not a toggle switch. It is a slow, heavy process of steel and stone. A high-capacity desalination facility requires approximately 36 months for environmental review, procurement, and construction. Falcon Lake, at its current rate of depletion, may only have 12 to 18 months of functional capacity remaining. We are living in the infrastructure gap, a precarious chronological window, where the old system has failed and the new system simply does not yet exist. In Zapata County, local officials are pivoting to emergency well drilling, But this is a stopgap. The groundwater here is high in total dissolved solids, or TDS, requiring intensive reverse osmosis that local small-scale systems aren't equipped to manage. These wells are the equivalent of trying to sustain a thirsty city with a few straws in a sandbox. They might keep the most critical service hospitals and emergency centers functional, but they cannot replace the billions of gallons required to keep an entire society from collapsing. The margin for error has evaporated, along with the lake. The countdown isn't just about the volume of water. It's about the time it takes to build a new way to live. But Falcon Lake is not an isolated casualty. It is a preview of a much larger continental transformation. As we look beyond the border, we see the same pattern of exhaustion repeating across the entire American West, suggesting that the very geography of where humans can thrive is being forcibly redrawn. Falcon Lake is not a localized tragedy. It is a continental alarm bell. It is the canary in the coal mine for a water-stressed nation. Just upstream, the Amistad Reservoir, the only other major international storage system on the Rio Grande, also languishing below 30% capacity. When the two primary batteries of the border's water grid fail simultaneously, we are no longer looking at a seasonal drought. We are witnessing a systemic breakdown of the American West's hydrological plumbing. While national headlines often fixate on the shrinking shorelines of Lake Mead and Lake Powell on the Colorado River, the Rio Grande is undergoing a silent, even more aggressive collapse. This river has already lost approximately 20% of its historical flow over the last century, and in many stretches, the Great River simply stops existing, leaving nothing but a dry scar of salt and gravel across the desert floor. We are entering the era of aridification. In the world of earth sciences, a drought is a temporary deviation from the norma dry spell that eventually breaks with the return of the rains. Aridification, however, is a permanent state change. It is the fundamental transformation of a landscape into something harsher, drier, and less hospitable. The climate models for South Texas and northern Mexico no longer predict a return to the lush, reliable flows of the mid-20th century. Instead, they suggest that the climate which birthed the 1944 Water Treaty is gone forever. We are trying to inhabit a map that has already been erased by a shifting atmosphere. Look one last time at the sun-drenched stones of Guerrero Viejo. For decades, those ruins were an invisible secret, tucked away beneath the safety of a thriving reservoir. Now they stand fully exposed, baked white like the skeletal remains of an organism that couldn't adapt fast enough. Every foot of that church tower that rises into the air is a testament to what we have lost, and a measurement of the water we may never get back. 500,000 people along the border are currently living inside a timeline that is compressing around them, waiting for infrastructure that is years away and rains that may no longer be enough. The water that built this region is leaving, and the silence it leaves behind is the most terrifying sound in the world.